Welcome to the Channel Surfers, where we help channel executives do their jobs better, learn a little bit, and hopefully entertain you, make you laugh. Right, Jeff?
That's it. That's it. Leave them laughing.
That's it. I'm John McCabe. I'm co-host of Channel Surfers, and joined as always by my good friend and co-host Jeff Lennon. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, John. Thanks, man. And by the way, when I say leave them laughing, I don't mean at your quote or your proposal. I mean you keep them happy.
Humor.
Yeah,
Good humor. Yeah.
keep them humored.
We try to do that. I think we're very lighthearted and humorous on this show. We take ourselves seriously a little bit, right? So
Yeah, just a tiny bit, and then make
yeah.
fun of that.
So today's show might be a little bit of a controversial show for some people, but I think it's something we need to talk about. And, if you ask 10 channel leaders what counts as partner sourced pipeline, I bet you get 10 different answers. What we want to talk about today is partner sourced opportunities, and not just how they get into you or why they're not getting to you, but like, how do you create them? Because they don't just come into your, deal reg, PRM automatically. There's some work behind it, right? So that's the subject of today's podcast is how to really work partner source deals or get to partner source deals.
Right. And basically, look, I mean, better define how you're getting those things and where the lines are drawn, because there's some interesting lines, right? And I think your point there, you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. What's really been interesting over the past, I'll say 2-3 weeks is you and I have had an opportunity to look at a bunch of different solutions that people are working on to help build out an ecosystem and build out a better channel process. And this is a big component of it, because it's like, well, who started it? What's the genesis? Those type of things. And, I think hopefully the takeaway from this, right, so everybody knows, I mean, our takeaway is that we want to walk through and talk about why is it a hard metric, and laying down those rules or those processes so that everybody's on the same page, right? And separating those, what we'll call the attribution buckets, right? That framework. I think that's going to also be really important.
I agree. Maybe why don't we start by let's each one of us give our definition of what a partner source deal is, and see how they differ. And I'll start. A partner source deal is obviously when a partner brings a deal to you, but I think a partner source deal comes to you after you bring deals to a partner and have established reputation and trust. I rarely see partner source deals coming without that. So I think that's my definition.
Okay. I'm kind of along the same lines. I think for me, look, a partner source deal, a clean one, right? Because there's times when we're going to meet at the client. So that technically will fall into that gray area of being partner source. If the partner is actually working with a client and then you have a rep, right? So just kind of to your point, but if you're both talking to the rep, but that partner's in there and he's got a relationship and they also have paper, kind of makes sense. But that's where I say that's kind of that gray area. But for me, the beginning of that definition is, a partner has either identified or introduced the opportunity to a vendor, right? They've basically have started the genesis, or they've either started the genesis and there hasn't really been much involvement, and maybe there has been some outreach and stuff like that, but there's really has been zero involvement from the vendor to actually drive the deal. So to me, that's kind of a delineator. And even so, like I said, for me, that gray area, if you're meeting at the partner, I hate to say it, like, put your ego aside and let's just, because the partner is probably had a longer relationship more times than not. So it would make sense to just lean in on that relationship and just, work it together. Right. And that's another thing, we talk about, even though it's sourced, it gets down to, we talk about trust, but making sure that people are aligned and that there's clear communication of who's doing what, who's aligned where, and who's actually, touching certain aspects of the flow. And yeah, so anyway, I'll just kind of pause. I mean, for me, that's kind of my definition. I'll go on for hours.
Look, let's talk about something, you spurred something in me here. A lot of times your vendor sales reps complain, oh, the partner never did anything to help close the deal. I would say more than I would expect. If you're bringing a deal to a vendor, it's probably in your best interest to keep close tabs on it so it closes, right? And I think what happens is direct sales reps don't want to share the commission and they make up excuses. But then again, there are deals, when we bring partners into deals, I don't see the partners always being engaged, and I could kind of relate to that. But I would say with a partner source deal, it's more important to a partner rep than we've let on, right? Because it's their customer, it's their reputation. They recommended us and they brought us in there, and now they're not going to walk away. I don't see that as an issue. I mean, but sales reps are always trying to get out of sharing commissions, right? They're always making up excuses. I always say I have two jobs. I got to sell to my internal and I got to sell to the partners.
Amen. No, amen. No, look, I think you bring up a good point. And I would say that having that alignment, right? And there can always be finger pointing because everybody thinks that they're driving the bus and they're the ones that are in control. And there is this kind of I used to say this to my kids all the time. There's independent, there's dependent, and then there's this interdependence where you're still working with somebody, you're independent, but you're still dependent upon them. To me, that's really what this whole partnership is about. And it's about understanding that there is this mutual gain from it. So understanding where those lines are. But I've seen it where people like they haven't done anything. And what are they doing? What's really hard is, unless you can see into a CRM, that crystal ball and see the transactions and understand the conversations, you're going to think nothing's going on. But there's a lot
Yeah.
of times things are happening behind the scenes, under the surface, so to speak. But, getting back to the partner source piece, as you were saying that, it hit me. It's like, if I had to simplify it down to one thing, it's the partner is the origin of the deal, right? So that would be the partner source.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you start to get into this mix thing is the influence deals. And this is where, you have an opportunity to, you can lean in with the partner and allow them to do a deal reg if it's influence, depending on many factors, right? Timing, execution, the size, the complexity, like there's a lot of things you want to be able to do. But I think that's another piece of it where, I think you and I had talked about this before, maybe not on a podcast, but being able to track that, not just in the CRM, PRM, where if there's an opportunity, and even though you may have handed it off to the partner to let them run it because of their relationship and they can get more done, or they've got the 5-6 year relationship with a client. It just makes sense. What I've always found is, you just want to keep those tabs on those things because it is important. But it's also important to make sure that as we're doing this together, right, that there's, kind of a symbiotic kind of, hey, if I'm bringing you stuff, we're going to hopefully go drive business together. And you're bringing deals to us because you see the value of the solution, you see the challenges and the things, the problems we solve. Let's go find other people to do that with, right? So it's, and I think we've used the term feeder and stuff, but
I
yeah,
call I call influenced or vendor sourced the worm on the hook, to get them interested in wanting to sell with us. But like you're kind of talking about a subject, that we have on our agenda, the three attribution buckets. You're kind of talking about them. I know you love the threes, so go over your three attribution buckets so we can help everybody understand what we're thinking about.
well, obviously, and I'm gonna give this is really weird. I'll give FireEye credit because they had coined the phrase. There was partner sourced and then deal partnerships. They kind of did this
Mm,
little play with the words.
right, right, right.
But you have sourced opportunities, partner sourced. You have partner influenced, and then you have this third bucket, which is like the accelerated partner. So where it's kind of an influence, but really the whole aspect of the partner here is to accelerate the opportunity. So it's almost like there's three potential stages of what I call the attribution or the partner go to market, where if I try to go do this, right, I mean, just it's all about time. Do they know who we are? Do they know what we do? Do we know what they do? Do we know their problems? Do we know their challenges? You go back, there's so many different sales philosophies, right? From spin selling, medic, medpic, B mentor, the challenger, right? Force management, which is all these different, but those take time to develop. Where if you have again, the trust, a warm relationship, you can actually get to some of those things much, much quicker. So that third attribution bucket is kind of an accelerated model, right? So you have your source, partner identified or partner identified and introduced. You've got your influence deals where the partner was involved in the deal. Whether we bring it to them or, if we're bringing them in and we're giving them the opportunity. So they're influencing the deal. And then there's this third where I've seen it happen. There have been a couple handful of partners where it's all about timing, and you're in there and you want to get something done and they can come in and basically help shorten that sales cycle, increase the deal size, right? So you're going to get speed, you're going to get size of the deal, or you're also going to get, additional aspects to the opportunity, which could impact both. Right.
Yeah. And, speaking of revenue, we're sponsored now by Extreme. And if you don't know what Extreme does, you could tell if you're doing deals with partners and you're managing, a local US based channel or global channel, that, trying to pay out your partners can kill motivation. You want to motivate your partners so they keep bringing those deals to you. But if you can't pay it to them, what are you going to do? And I think, Extreme helps fix that because they have this amazing platform for channel payouts. And it helps you to, instantly send global incentives, MDF funds, commissions, spiffs, and rebates, right? And your partners can choose how they get paid. There's a bank transfer, digital wallet, prepaid cards, depending on what their organization allows. And it's in over 140 currencies. So, stop all the manual spreadsheets and missing payments. Go look up Extreme and give them a test drive. They really have a solution to help keep your partners motivated so these partner source deals keep coming your way. xtrm.com. You got it. All right. So continuing on with I love your three
Extreme,
attributions.
xtrm.com.
I love.
And then, by the way, not just mine. I mean, I've pulled this together. I'd have to get a list of people because, like I said, some of the people from my days at FireEye, Chris Carter was the channel chief at the time, and there was a handful of other people there that, and because there were so many things happening, and it was a very complex sale, right? And that's one of the things I've tried to explain to people. Cybersecurity. Right. Selling solution through cybersecurity. It's not just you're not going to Lowe's and buying a Porter cable drill. Okay. There's some complexity to it. So having a channel and having the right partners involved, I think is critical, but I have to give credit to, people over my career.
Like we talked about,
was kind of a culmination of my experience.
How do you get your sales teams to agree to do this? And I've been doing this so long and heard all the excuses from sales reps. I really don't agree with a deal reg. A sales rep get engaged and they think the partner's not doing anything, so they're going to take it direct, and that never goes over well with anyone, on the partner side. So, talk about how you get your sales teams to agree. Like, you give me your opinion, I'll give you my opinion.
Oh man! Well, first of all, the beatings will continue until the morale improves. No, but no, it actually, I'll use that joke there, but it really it has to come from the top. You've got to have the executive sponsorship. This came up on our podcast with Scott Struble. It came up with Vaughn Mordecai, the CRO. We just did another one. Having the sales leadership, the CRO, or if there's a VP of sales, great. If there's a CRO
or the CEO.
Well, you need to have that sales leader, because I've seen where you can have the CEO, but the sales leader still thinks he gets.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's just, I've seen it at least, a couple times. I'll say. I was going to say at least twice, but but I think you have to have that buy-in from the VP of sales or CRO to help not only set and confirm the model, but the process, the rules of engagement. I think that needs to happen. And people need to know that, we're doing this and it's not a short-term thing. It's not about the quick hit and the additional comp, in your commission. And if you can keep it comp neutral, when we had Ross on, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this with Ross and Nick and a couple other podcasts. Getting a program that is comp neutral actually benefits you because there's a value to working with the partner now where they're not losing anything. And what ends up happening is it becomes a flywheel effect. It comes an opportunity for them to go do more. So that's number one, is getting executive leadership buy-in, making sure that you have the right rules and processes, making sure that those processes are properly tracked, because and when I say properly tracked, I keep saying, I go back to a lot of our episodes because I feel like these things kind of keep weaving back and forth. But, when a deal closes, the amount of people that want to put their fingerprint on an opportunity when the deal closes to show that they had credit or involvement or touch, I mean, and I get it, but if we're doing our right documentation and we're doing the right, and we're following the right process and we're showing that through the CRM and a PRM, if they have it, it's gonna be reflective in the outcome, right? And getting reps to do that from a partner perspective is important. And again, just digress here to AI. I think AI is going to help that tremendously to gather the notes from a call, get the right point, the right points, the right data points, the right follow-up points, the actions, so that everybody's on the same page.
No, that's right. I don't disagree with any of that. I would say having executive buy-in is critical. If your CRO or VP of sales is not lockstep with you, you're not going to have an easy road. I would say also, if your organization has committed to 100% channel, there's no arguments anymore. If they're channel first, there's a little gray area, right? Because partners are like, what does that mean? Because it could mean direct sales still take place. It still means there's the opportunity for a sale to go direct.
Amen.
So, I've said this before on the show, when I'm looking at running a new program and talking to the executives, I want their buy-in to define what they want, either 100% channel first is okay, but I really do emphasize that they push deals to the partners, because look at, when we work with startups, they want pipeline built, right? How are you going to do that? You gotta get some deals into partner hands, and you gotta have no resistance from your sales force, so everything works and is able to create that trust and respect, so you can continue building pipeline, right?
100%. No, I like that. It's what's interesting, and it comes back to, right? It goes back to, what is the process that you have, right? What are the rigors that you have in place to make sure that the right things are happening? Are you tracking, the deals that are being put in and how they're being put into the CRM? If for example, if you wait until a deal is closed or closing to get the partner information in, your program's already dead. It's already DOA. I mean, I'm just saying, it's like you're already setting yourself up for failure, because everybody's going to debate where, when, what, how. But I will say that, I mean, we've come a long way. I don't see that nearly as much, if I don't want to say if all, but nearly as much as I used to. But I think, having the ability to, do some, validation of what's in the bucket, what's in the pipeline, making sure that you have clear definitions of what the engagement process looks like. And I'm going to go back to, I think Scott was on a podcast with him, publish the rules of engagement. If you're doing 100% channel, what does that mean? Outline it, put it out there, and have it come from the CRO or from the VP of sales, so that the teams know that this is what the process is and this is what we're going to do. And I think, it clears up a lot of the gray area, clears up a lot of the questions, and makes it really easy for anybody in the organization to know what's supposed to be happening and when it's supposed to be happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like that. I really, that's an important thing to in any, organization, any program, have your rules, your laws published. So somebody says, "Hey, I don't remember doing that," and you like point them to the shared drive. It's like, go look at that. We it's signed and dated, and it's been in place for years, and there's no
Yeah.
argument because that you've proven, hey, this has been established. You got to follow the rules. One of the things I love is, like, you're talking there before. I love how reps send quotes without margin included. And then it's like, oh God, you got to pull it back. It's like fishing. You got to pull it back, and you got to like retweak it and apologize to everybody. And the customer's already seen the price, and now they're going to see a higher price from the partner. And it's such a nightmare. I just, I cringe whenever that happens. But you know,
Well, it comes back to, that rules of engagement, and how are quotes supposed to go out, and is everybody on the same page with that? But you bring up an interesting point. So if and I'm going to give you a lot of credit. I mean, you build out, a couple different channel processes. I know we've got an upcoming podcast with one of your former colleagues, which was, I made a joke, and I'll kind of, I don't want to say who it is or what, but I made a joke. I'm like, well, I appreciate you coming on, because I just thought John would. No, I'm just kidding. But
I
he
was full of
basically
smoke.
validated a lot of stuff. Yeah, but he validated a lot of stuff that we talk about, that you talk about, that you said that you've done, and how it's been done, and like, what the old saying, the proof is in the pudding. So the question that I
All
have for
don't
you
lie,
is,
as they say in hoops.
exactly. So what does good look like for you when you're trying to develop a clean, efficient part?
Hmm. Uh, First and foremost, I think you have to have a a clean relationship, and what I mean by, like, no screw ups along the line while you get to build a relationship with these partners, right? The other thing is, trust goes along with that, but I think even more important is, do you have a product that you can go to a partner and they can help close? What's the sales cycle like? Is the product, transactional, or is it complicated? Do they understand? If the product is complicated, what it entails for, just setting up a POC. But I think to have a clean relationship with a partner, there's a lot of things you and I as channel executives have to do to pave the path. Enablement, margin, options, um, communication. Do you blow off your partners? It drives me nuts when no one responds to a message that I send them, like a text, and it goes on weeks and weeks, and you keep following up, and they still don't respond. Like, respond, people. If somebody's asking you a question, respond. And I think that's one thing. Communication is critical. But I think, in order to make it a clean and profitable relationship, there's so much blocking and tackling you and I have to do. The sales reps just have to
Mm,
be going and closing the deal with the partner. And I don't
yeah.
want them to be doing an enablement. I want them to be friendly with the partner reps, and I want them to have a relationship. They don't have to enable them. They don't have to do any of the things that we do. They just have to work together to sell the deal. And especially if it's a deal reg partner source deal, it should be top priority for them to help them.
Yep. No, I like that. Well, and I'll throw something out there. I thought you would say, because I've been on calls with you, and I've heard you talk about it. And that is there's two percentage one. The first percentage is making sure you have a clear outline. Here is the margins. Here's how we're selling it. Here's what you get for sourced. Here's what you get for your influenced. Right. And those are the two main ones. The acceleration one is going to be, could be a combination of both, but having clear lines of what margin are. The other is that percentage of how much needs to be sourced and how much needs to be influenced. And it's almost a 2-to-1, right? At least in the beginning, to get it to start to build out a healthy, mature mix in your
Yeah.
program. Right.
And I think to go along with that, like, how do you define a clean program? Like, I think it's important that you and I as executives hold QBRs regularly with partners to understand what's coming in, what's going out, what's closing, what have we been doing as a partnership over the past quarter. and it's also time to see what's going right and what's going wrong, and be honest about it, right?
I think that's, well, first of all, I think that's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of it. And I think it often gets overlooked, right? Um, and I'll come back to a big thing for me. I always talk about the devils in the details or the data, right? Having a way to manage and track that, right? So having a way to report on, and I know people are like, oh, you just got to go do. You need a guardrail. You need something that can show you and tell you, right? And like I said, we've looked at a handful of solutions recently and super impressed. I mean, where people are really looking to try to take away some of the gaps and the missteps that happen in channel
Mm-hmm.
programs, and not only from and I'll go, not only from that strategic aspect, right, but from the execution aspect. That tactical execution, I think, is where we fall down. We have great ideas, we have great strategies, we build out the plan to execute that strategy, but then we fall short, right? So having reports that allow you to oh gosh, show you where those three buckets are lined up and how they're lined up, right? Um, you know, I'm also a big believer in, under deliver and over commit. Don't overclaim something, right? Just be honest, but don't try to be too verbose on something. But and I've seen it firsthand, right? Where does the partner contribution actually link to the real outcomes? And make sure you can show that, whether it's the velocity, the deal size, or the win rate. Um, I think that's where you're able to go back to leadership, say, hey, we put together this plan. You helped me, you helped us set up, we set up the rules of engagement and the guardrails, and this is what we now have. Right. And that's where having something like a PRM, which is more specifically designed to help manage that. You can go build it out in a CRM. You can. I've seen it done. It gets a little top heavy. Where, and by the way, something else I just realized talking with somebody looking at their solution, a lot of these PRMs will also host the website for the partner portal, as well as for the public
Mm-hmm.
facing, here's all the
Mm-hmm.
partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing. But being able to link that to the contribution and the outcome, I think is paramount.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And just kind of going back to the accelerated component that we talked about, I think that component is extra margin to a partner when they help speed the deal close or help us wade through the red tape and get to a close. And it's
Yep.
definitely something that we should, you as an executive listening to this, give 5 or 10 extra points to a deal if it helps, if they've helped close the deal for you within your quarter or faster, right? That goes a long way with making the whole partnership, positive and
Yep.
clean, and you'll see more deal regs coming your way, more partner sourced opportunities.
Well, look, I mean, and one of the things, I think people fall short is, they try to show every deal a partner touches, right? They try to use that to potentially inflate the pipeline with vague involvement or minuscule involvement, or just at the end of the day, if you're honest and you're upfront, right, it's going to come through. And then, like I said, back in the rules, just what are the definitions? What are the ideals that we're trying to project about how we want to be a partner company and how we want to go to market? And I think that comes across stronger. And again, we've both lived it. Partners appreciate it, and that builds a level of trust that can really really impact your business.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, both from a growth, financial growth, people growth, knowledge growth, reputation growth. Boy, that's going to be a good takeaway in the when we do the video thing.
All right, so we're coming to the close to the end of the show here. Let's do
Weeks.
Jeff's. We'll call them the Monday morning takeaways. What are your Monday morning takeaways from
Uh,
Partner Source?
Monday morning takeaways. Jesus. Um, that's a great question. So what I would, there, one of the things, and I'm going to go back to, so I didn't mean to lean away from the microphone. I'm going to go back to, oh God, Kyle Edmund Hayes. God,
My buddy.
I knew he had
Yeah,
three
yeah.
names, right? Loved our thing with him. I learned a couple things about some British terminology, but one of my takeaways, which probably wouldn't have been in my Monday morning takeaway, John, came from that conversation. That is, and I'll drill just on the specific part of the partner source thing, right? So if you can write down your current partner source pipeline definition, if you can write that down in
Yeah.
one sentence, I think if you can't do that, then you have a problem. So you just, and that's okay. You just need to go back and figure out, I need to know what is that partner source pipeline definition. It has to be in one sentence, very simple, very clean. If you can do that, great. If you can't, you have a problem. Second is, make sure that you're, depending on the size of the organization, that you're scheduling time with the CRO or the sales leaderships to make sure that you're aligned on the go-to-market, on the 3 buckets of your definitions and how you're looking to manage and track it.
Yeah.
And then the other would be, and I think it's more of an audit thing, right? Going back, looking at, your partner deals, right? Don't just take the stuff for face value, right? Make sure that you understand where that attribution was, what they actually did, what they touched, what was their influence, what did they bring to the table. But going back and I may have said this before, and if I haven't, we spend more time dissecting our losses to understand why we lost something. And we don't spend enough time looking at, okay, well, we won that. How did we win? Why did we win that? And then making sure that we reinforce those things so that, we can be more successful. And then the other part of that is to make sure that the items line up with the specific buckets so that we can prove, right? So that we're being completely transparent about, we said we were going to do A, we delivered on this, and now here we are.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think postmortem on losses and postmortem on wins should be something that's the norm. Company I was consulting for last year, we actually closed a deal. We had a complicated product, and it wasn't an easy sales cycle at all. But we actually closed a deal within 90 days with a client. Now, they were referred into us, but the VP of sales and I were talking about it because we did it through a partner. And he's like, I'm going to write down how this went, how we made this happen so fast. And I want all my reps to, to review it. I'm like, that's a great idea because now you have the recipe for a complicated sale that you could race, or not race through, but you could push a little faster than normal. Right. So I love that takeaway, because if you're building a playbook, you have to have plays, right? You have to be able to understand how to win.
Absolutely.
And, if you're like, the teams that can't put 2 wins together, I think both our baseball teams right now, but, if you don't have a plan or a playbook with a plan and a set of plays to run, you're not going to get success. Right.
Man, you just gave me a great idea, for another episode, because it ties on to this. So as you were saying, I'm like, this is huge, because I think you just hit a nerve, right? So, trying to align the partner contribution to that financial impact. And then so that you can show that from, to an executive, whether it's through reporting, whatever it is, but being able to show that contribution and the financial impact is kind of where the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof that is showing people that what we're doing and how we're doing it matters. And, and the hard part, and again, we're talking like a lot of people don't get it. I think there's a lot of companies that do get it. I've been to a couple events in the past couple of weeks. A lot of companies get it. They really do. And I guess for the people that are in those companies, if you're doing it, that's great. But don't rest on your laurels. Don't slack off. Make sure that you are doing these things, because, it is important to make sure we show that, and that we're proving case. But I think there's also a handful of companies that aren't doing it. And it's not, look, at the end of the day, not everybody's going to jump on the train. I get it. But anyway, I just thought that would be an interesting follow-up to this show.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Very good idea. All right. So we're at the end of the show. Any final words?
No, that was my Monday morning takeaway.
Okay, good.
I guess if my final, my 3 things would be, look, figure out what your attribution model is going to look like. then define those steps, those titles, right? What is sourced? What is influenced? And then if there's that third bucket, accelerate it, because influenced is like, hey, the partner was there, the opportunity existed, we helped move the deal forward, blah, 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 whether they did paper or whatever. But the accelerated one is, it's still an existing opportunity, but there was much more impact. So for me, source would be where did the deal come from, right? Influenced is who helped me close it. And I would say accelerated would be who helped improve the outcome.
I like it. Definitely 3 very positive definitions for any partner sourced program. You should adhere to those 3 points. And it was well said. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
all right.
Thank you. I've learned a lot, John.
Yeah. Well, and that's the end of the show for today, but definitely, I think it's a great topic. And if anyone listening has any questions or comments, you could reach us at our website, www.channelsurfers.com. We also have a LinkedIn page where we post our most recent release of our show every Tuesday. And also, we have a YouTube channel. Channel Surfers? No, Channel Surfer Guys.
Channel Surfer Guys.
Channel Surfer Guys.
The Channel Surfers was taken. It's a long story. We could do multi-episodes about that. But
so if you're more comfortable watching our podcast, great. If not, you can get us on the majority of the podcast services that are out there. So Jeff, until our next show, and I think next week's show is very interesting. It's the CEO of a company I used to work with, and I think everyone who is either a founder or is trying to work with a founder to build a channel program should listen to this show. So that will be out following our podcast release for this one. So until then, thanks again for doing the show, Jeff. And thank you, audience, for listening. And we appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Take care.